You're listening to Dodge Movie Podcast. Your hosts are Christy and Mike Dodge, the founders of Dodge Media Productions. We produce films and podcasts, so this is a podcast about films. Join them as they share their passion for filmmaking.
The process of making a film can be difficult because when you're in the filmmaking process, you don't have a good idea of what it's like for the viewer. Part of the way that we in the filmmaking business solve this problem is by focus groups. We ask people to watch a film and then tell us what they think. That helps us understand how what we're doing comes across to the viewer. If you would like to participate in that process on one of our films in the future, please send an email to christy@dodgemediaproductions.com and let us know that you're willing to participate in a focus group. In fact, we may avail ourselves of your services in the very near future. Act now.
And you don't have to have any previous film knowledge because we actually want to know if the film is hitting the beats for the average audience. So no previous experience required.
Just passion. Hello everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to talk about an epic picture, the Odyssey. There's the joke of a cast of thousands, and I would argue that they maybe got there, certainly a cast of hundreds. There is a fun story that we saw on behind the scenes where Tom Holland says he asked to visit set on a day that he wasn't acting yet, and it took him 20 minutes of walking to get through all of the extras and background players just to the crew. And that's a lot of extras and background players.
I would love to know what the ratio of crew members to cast, including those background and extras. And what is a typical film?
That's an excellent question. I wonder when is the last time we have made a big feature that had that many extras. Back in the day, you would think of like the biblical movies as having 1,000 guys out in the desert pretending to be Egyptian slaves making a pyramid or something. I don't feel like Hollywood does that anymore, in part because crowds are almost always CGI now.
Yep.
Because it's so much faster and cheaper. And easier to just add them in after the fact. So now I have a Saturday Night Live skit about a person who just does the ping pong ball green screen work as a background player for crowds. And they have a bunch of different looks and all of that. I can see that.
All their headshots.
Yeah. So this is definitely an epic movie about an epic film.
And a nod to old-timey, big, what they call them, sandal?
Sword and sandals.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Of old Hollywood.
Yeah, it's not about an epic film, but about an epic story.
Yeah.
Homer's Odyssey is, by very nature, a long journey. That's what Odyssey has come to mean from the character, of course, of Odysseus. And this film is quite long. It's almost 3 hours. In the theater, I was unfortunately aware of how long it was, and I don't think this is a criticism of the film per se, but it felt to me like you could easily cut it at the 45-minute marks into a 4-ep limited series. And you and I talked about, after we left the theater, about that. As in the modern era with streaming and such, would you make a 4-ep miniseries out of this instead of a 3-hour movie?
I wonder if you even could these days. And they've tried it with some of the 1 hour, like NBC would do like a 1 hour live Peter Pan. But I wonder if you said, this is only going to be on, we would not benefit from this because we don't have cable. But if you said for 4 nights on ABC, it's only going to be on Monday through Thursday, tune in or you miss it.
That was the old days. You brought up the Thornbirds. I remember that was a big event. You called it Appointment TV, which I think was an NBC slogan, but one of the networks called it Appointment TV.
Yeah.
The idea was that you would adjust your life to their broadcast schedule. And people do not believe in that anymore. That's the other way around.
Yeah.
But how would it play differently? Because, like Da Vinci did his artwork to be viewed from a certain position in space, a certain height and distance. I feel like filmmakers would do it that way too. When you're thinking a 3-hour epic in the theater versus 4-ep stream miniseries, I think you would do it differently somehow. You would probably approach the task a little bit differently.
Well, I wonder how, I mean, I'm sure Nolan wouldn't do this because it's probably like box office suicide. But if you just said it's one night, you know, it's like a Fathom event.
Right.
You have one night where you could go see Nolan's Odyssey. You know, because why do we think, I mean, when Bruce Springsteen comes to town, he only does one night in Portland.
Right.
And then he moves on.
And goes to
But
Seattle.
as far as Portlanders' opportunity to see something, you only have one night. You don't say, oh, come on, Bruce, why don't you hang out for a week? It doesn't fit into my schedule. But yet if it's a movie, we immediately are like, one night? What are you talking about? You know what I mean? I mean,
Yes.
it is curious.
On the other end of the continuum is a novel. If you write a novel, a person can consume it over any number of days separated in time. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I was getting at when I was saying that maybe there was a part of it where Nolan said, I want it to be one continuous experience, like the Odyssey. It was a continuous journey that Odysseus had to go on. I don't know how much that came out. We didn't see that in the BTS, but I would be curious. And as filmmakers, I point at Martin Scorsese for the longer films that we have now. But
you're blaming him.
Yeah.
Although, I don't know. I'm going to gently push back. I'm going to interrupt you and push back. I know you're shocked. I'm going to interrupt you.
What?
I don't know how. I mean, I said this when we walked out. I don't know how you tell the tale of the Odyssey and not have it be a long epic, or it's going to look like almost like a drunk history glossary. Like this happened, then this happened, then there were the sirens, and then this, and then there was this one-eyed, monster, and then he got home. Like, I don't know how you tell the story. It is purposefully Homer set up.
Right.
Nolan, how could he do anything but a 3-hour movie?
Which, as an aside, I cast Chris Parnell as Odysseus in the Drunk History version. But yeah, that's exactly a good point. How do you do that? And I bet there are some Greek poetry nerds out there that have a bone to pick with Nolan about something that he did leave
left out. Yes.
Because 3 hours is still not enough probably to handle the whole story.
Yeah.
He did get the big touch points, the stuff that I remembered. So I think he did a fine version there. I think this is maybe bumping up against a little bit of our expectations in that now with streaming so much, I think I have become accustomed to being able to pause and go get my drink and go to the bathroom and do other things. And when you're in the theater, it is an Odyssey, right? That's the whole point, is that you're in for the 3 hours. You're buckled in, kind of like Matt Damon on that ship.
Yeah.
You're in it.
To your point, and we could look this up, how many pages, which I know font size adjusts this, how many pages is the Odyssey? And how many pages is that Ellen Hilderbrand, The 5-Star Weekend?
Oh, okay. Great idea.
And they broke that one up, the new Jen Garner. Yeah. By the way, it was 5 eps. We watched it. I enjoyed it.
I did too.
I think I could go on a tangent. Won't. Check it out. It's a good hang. But I bet it has fewer pages, and they broke that one up into 5 eps.
Right. And I know that they did make some plot changes in the translation from the novel to the 5 eps. And I think Nolan was constrained because he couldn't make the kind of changes you might naturally do because the Odyssey is such a well-known piece. There was some chatter apparently on the internet, I heard secondhand, about the casting of Travis Scott, who is a rapper, to play the Bard character because he doesn't look Greek. He looks like his family came from Africa at some point. I immediately push back and say Anne Hathaway is delightfully pale and Matt Damon doesn't look Greek at all either.
Yeah.
This is just a movie, folks. And I use the example of what Dax Shepard talked about Hamilton, that you immediately get lost in the characters and stop thinking about this perceived concept of race. I don't think this was supposed to be historically accurate. If nothing else, they all have really nice teeth, and I don't think anybody in that era had teeth that nice. Apparently, some people have also talked about the weaponry or armor was not period correct. I didn't notice the difference because I'm not an expert in that stuff, but I think it worked just fine. I don't think it has to be historically accurate. This is not what he was doing. He was making an entertaining story, a storyteller. So I think in that regard, it's incredible. Now, we watched a making of the behind the scenes.
It's on Peacock if you want to check it out.
And that makes me even more impressed about what they were able to do. Because Christopher Nolan is known for wanting to do things practically if possible, not relying on computer-generated imagery. And I was unaware of the lengths to which they went on that. It was incredible, the behind the scenes, which for me would have been a better trailer than the trailer. If you'd shown me all that production stuff ahead of time, I'm like, oh, I gotta go see how they did it. Right. But that is impressive how much effort they put into that. And that's why I feel a little bit bad in commenting that it was long, which was a definite part of my experience, because I don't want it to take away from what I think is a fantastic experience. I saw this morning that Matt Damon said in an interview that it was less making a movie and more like going on an adventure with these people. The person had asked him, what was the hardest day of filming? And he said, they were all hard. There was no easy day. And I thought, this is an interesting thing with the people making it versus the people viewing it. That in some sense, this film is a memento of they went on this adventure, but none of us shared that. So we're naturally viewing the film differently than the people who made it. And they bonded, as often happens on film crews, because you're on a location maybe, but you're under a lot of pressure and there's complexities and you bond, which we didn't share because we're the audience. And that to me is also an interesting thing, that they put the actors through their own Odyssey. So it plays on a bunch of different levels. Good job, Chris. I think that this film is a good film. I want to watch it again before I give a real strong opinion one way or the other, because I feel like after I saw more of this making of, I feel like I would watch the film differently a second time. And I was curious if you had a sensation when you were watching it. Were you aware of how long it was or where you were at in the whole Odyssey?
Well, I think that a couple things. I went into this, first of all, we set ourselves up for failure because we went to a late afternoon movie, which either this phase of my life or post lunch, I get sleepy. So I was extremely concerned that I would fall asleep in this movie. Secondly, I read the Odyssey via Cliff Notes in 1988. Thank you, Cliff Notes. You got me through English class. And I was concerned that when I saw this movie, I wanted to go see it. I know every filmmaker person loves Chris, or even just general audiences love Christopher Nolan. And I like maybe half of his films just because they just kind of don't tend to be in my genre, not because of anything specific. But anyway, so it felt like homework. This movie felt like homework. I felt like we needed to go. I'm a person who loves to be in the know of pop culture. And I felt like this was one of those movies that this coming Oscars, there would be a ton of Odyssey jokes and I wanted to get them all. And so I don't like to be left out on what people are referencing. So I was going mostly with those, that was my intention. Knowing that because I said we set ourselves up, we spent the morning at the zoo walking around, which is going to make me tired. So I was very concerned I would fall asleep in this movie. You tire me out in the morning.
Right.
You then take me to a movie. We eat lunch at the movie. And then you put me in a dark space in a comfy recliner. That is just asking for me to fall asleep.
Right. And I made it even worse for myself because I only got like 3 hours sleep the night before.
Right. So to Nolan's credit, I did not ever once feel sleepy. And
oh yeah, correct.
I had I'd say it was an hour and a half in, and I had lost situational awareness. I was sucked into the movie.
Excellent.
And I don't want to sound weird, but almost left my body. I had forgotten that I was sitting in a chair in a theater, with people around us. I got sucked into the story. I was in. I wanted to know what was going to happen, even though, thanks to Cliff Notes, I know what happens. But it's still, and so I would say from a perspective of just at about an hour and a half in, I did happen to, I think I looked at my watch just because I was kind of curious.
Sure.
Which you don't exactly know because there's about a half hour of trailers. So it's like, even though our movie started at noon, that's when the trailers started. The movie actually didn't start till like probably 12:30ish.
Yeah, it was exactly 12:30.
Okay. So you don't really know where you are, but I figured it would probably end about 3:30. So anyway, I looked at my watch and it was 2:00. And I just had a sensation of, I've been sitting this exact same position. So I think I wiggled a little bit in my seat to just kind of, I don't know, tap back into my body. And that's when I realized, I have completely forgotten I was in a theater. I was sucked in. So I think that's a credit to Nolan that it took an hour and a half. And it wasn't that the story got boring at that point it was just, I think my watch haptic went off at 2:00 on the hour.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of pulled me into my body again. But then the rest of the movie, it is so engrossing. The lengths that they went to, the fact that, especially like you said, after we watched that making of, and just even the boat scenes, that they are not on a tank on a lot. They're in the actual ocean in a boat, actually rowing. Like they even said they did put a little motor so that they wouldn't get themselves parallel to the beach, when that could be dangerous. They're probably just to right them in a way that, but the fact that boat, the only way that boat could be propelled is if all of those extras are rowing in unison to get the boat to move in a direction that they, just that alone, let alone all the other epic things that they, and what, 5 locations, and not just 5 locations within one country.
Right.
They went to Greece and Morocco and England and
Scotland
LA
and
and
Iceland,
Scott. It was just like,
Spain.
Holy cow.
Right. I figure Matt Damon will run into Kevin Costner at a party and tease him about Waterworld. We had to row out to our location, Kevin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the IMAX experience is designed to give you that immersion. We did not see it in an IMAX theater. We saw it in what I would call a traditional big screen theater. But the whole point of going with the IMAX cameras is that immersion. And I think the IMAX cameras deserve a special mention in a sense because we had heard that Nolan had asked IMAX to make them quieter. One of the things that's not well known is how loud they are, to the point with the traditional IMAX, many films were not shot entirely on IMAX because they were so loud that you couldn't really do up-close conversations. The camera noise ruined your audio. You'd have to loop the dialogue and build the audio entirely from scratch in sound design, which is time-consuming and costly. And for this case, he had asked them to see if they could make it quieter. The solution was to put it in an enclosure. And while I think that worked, I'm not sure if that's the best possible solution because they said that the enclosure was itself several hundred pounds, I thought it was. It required a bunch of people to lug it around the set, even more so than normal your grips lugging camera equipment. But it is an interesting choice to go on film. And somebody had mentioned that it was edited on film, and you just this morning showed me a video where Nolan talks about they shot it on film, developed that film, then scanned that so they could edit digitally, which makes tons of sense from a time perspective, and then put it back to film to exhibit, at least in IMAX theaters. I don't think it's exhibited on film in any other location. I think where we saw it was probably a digital package DCP that they sent. But I thought that was an interesting choice. Me personally, for this kind of a movie, I think it would naturally tend toward a much lighter camera rig because, as you mentioned, they're on this boat in the middle of the ocean. There's not a lot of room on boats, and there's a lot of guys with oars whacking them around. So you really wouldn't want to have a very big or heavy, because I think of the poor camera person, even if it's not in the sound enclosure, that rig is heavy and that guy's on a pitching deck. You would want that to be as light as possible. I'm thinking, of course, of Deadliest Catch. Those guys use fairly small cameras, and I think there was a reason. But those guys also went through cameras, the saltwater attacks cameras, and they said this was the first film that Nolan did not destroy at least one IMAX camera, which at $500,000 or so per camera, that's why he has a budget of $250 million, I guess, if he goes through camera gear.
That's just amazing if he normally wrecks one and this one he didn't, because, you know, like they were in the sand in Morocco and they were on the, like to your point, on the ocean, and they were hiking in the fjords of Scotland.
And these weird caves and forests and smoke.
Yeah, the original cave that they think Zeus was born in. I mean, I was just like, oh my God, because that cave could have easily been a soundstage. Nope.
Right.
We got to hike up to this cave in Greece. I mean, just hats off to you, and do not get any ideas, because as a husband, wife, director, producer team, I am not going to those lengths to produce this type of a movie for you.
One of the things I love about this film is that pairing of Christopher Nolan and his wife, Emma, who's his producer.
Yeah,
and
hats off to her.
Yeah, Matt Damon said in an interview she's kind of the unsung hero because she had to coordinate all the logistics of all this stuff. And I just think that is almost a caricature of the ideal situation as a director. You have a crazy idea and you wave your hand and somebody else goes and does all the hard work to make it happen. I don't think that he did no work. I'm sure Nolan worked very hard too, but what he asked his production team to do is astounding. And yes, somebody gave him the money, which I gotta think they'll get all that back. If his previous film, Oppenheimer, made $1 billion in the box office all told, this one's gonna do just as well.
So, you know, sometimes the NBA players stray on their wives and the wives end up with nice jewelry.
Right.
I hope Mrs. Emma gets something very, very nice.
She's got this giant diamond now.
I hope
this one's
gets,
from the Odyssey,
yeah.
right? Maybe there's that nice car she would like, or a chateau in Switzerland.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I
she
hope
earned
she's
her
compensated well.
Also in the behind the scenes that we saw on Peacock, I think her name is Ruth de Jong, the production designer.
She was amazing.
Yeah, just I imagine this. And what I love about this is also with the composer, I think his name is Ludwig Göransson. I probably mispronounced it. I apologize. They went out of the way, but they enjoyed the challenge.
Yeah.
And I have to say, maybe it's because I'm getting older.
I know.
But I was like, I don't know if I would have said, oh yeah, Chris, I really want to embrace this challenge. I saw a thing this morning that in order to be properly ripped and lean and buff and everything for the part, Matt Damon, who is in his mid to late 50s,
he's our
probably,
age,
he had to swear off carbs for a couple of years, apparently. And there was some situation where he was going to go out to dinner with his daughters and he promised that he would eat pasta with them. And they get to the restaurant and they all order their meal, and he called the waiter back and said, no, I changed my mind, can I get a steak? And his daughters are very upset with him. And he said, well, I'll have a bite of each of yours, but like I have to stay on the regimen in order to be prepared.
Well, tell the story about the beard.
Oh, yes. So this is fascinating. So Chris Nolan went to his hair and makeup department and said he had a rule, and that was no wigs, no prosthetic hair of any sort. And his reasoning, which I actually can see, is that fake hair or applied hair would not handle getting wet and salty and sandy in the same way that regular hair would. So he went to Matt Damon and he said, we need you to have a beard. And Matt said, okay, but I've never grown a full, big, bushy beard before. I don't know how it's gonna look when it comes in, which as a person who has a patch where hair doesn't grow, I could see his fear. Unless you've done it, you don't know, is it gonna be straggly? Is it gonna be bushy? And so Matt had to go off and grow this beard for the film. And as in the film, you can see they did dye it some because I think it came in naturally more gray than the early days. And I'm thinking, and this is when he's not eating carbs as well, so he's wandering around LA probably looking pretty scraggly and haggard in preparation for this film. They showed also the amount of training they went into for the fight scenes, and I was glad that Matt Damon mentioned that it's more like dancing than actual fighting. Mm-hmm. But it's still amazing the amount of physicality that is involved, and that these actors can learn these motions so well that they're safe. They can do it.
I was going to say, because if you don't, somebody can get really hurt. If somebody moves one way instead of the other.
Right. And I don't know if it was full John Wick, but some of the footage we saw looked pretty intense for those actors. Mm-hmm. And it's always weird seeing them wearing just like gym equipment.
Street clothes,
yeah. While they're doing it. But that was kind of cool. I mentioned the composer. Apparently they wanted to have
that was amazing.
Music that didn't sound like a Hollywood orchestral cinematic score.
Yeah.
And so the guy found a lyre, and this gal taught herself to play it. I think she's a professor of musicology or something. Mm-hmm. Another guy recreated this flute, and they created these brass cymbals and all of that. And it did give it a very distinctive score. Mm-hmm. I have to say, I like the big Hans Zimmer-esque sweeping orchestra.
Totally.
But I admire that dedication. Like I said, they all embrace like the challenge, like, oh boy, this is a fun challenge. And as I said, maybe I'm just too old, but maybe it's just, it wasn't my project, so I didn't have the passion.
Well, I think the other thing too, you can't get past, if he gets a massive budget like that and you get these department heads that you can just go off and send to do their research. But as an indie filmmaker, that's us. Like, if we wanted a period accurate musical instrument, we're doing the research, we're doing the construction, we're maybe finding somebody to play it.
Maybe.
But yeah, so it is different. Like,
Very
I mean,
much.
I don't want to take anything away from Nolan. Like,
No.
he executed this movie in a way I don't know if many people could. I mean, this is definitely probably one of my favorites of his films. I mean, I absolutely loved this movie. It deserves all the credit it's getting and all the praise, and I get why he's who he is.
That's an interesting perspective. I hadn't thought about ranking it in his films. His films can be hit and miss for me, which I don't say as a criticism. I actually think is a plus, because it says that he's trying to do different things. He's trying to go different ways. So, for example, he did Batman Begins, which is, I think, one of my favorite Batman movies. I really like that quite a bit.
Clooney, or is that
No,
Bale?
Christian Bale.
Okay.
And then he also did like The Dark Knight, which I didn't care for much at all. But I think that's good that he's taking these swings. And yes, not to take anything away from him, but you're right. When you have these department heads, an entire department supporting them, where someone can go off and do it.
Yeah.
I read a while ago that for the movie Seven, Fincher paid $15,000 to have somebody spend 2 months to fill these composition notebooks with actual writing, but none of that was on screen. No one flips through all 200 of those notebooks. Is that really worthwhile? That's a Hollywood thing. But in the case of Odyssey, when they went and they figured out how to take brass and make it look like it had been in a battle and it had been exposed to the elements, and to age it up, that's a thing that, in my opinion, shows up on screen. Mm-hmm. I don't know the difference. Mm-hmm. I'm not a metallurgist or an armorer, but I think it lends to the verisimilitude that's on screen, and I think that level of dedication. So yes, some other nerd went and figured that out, but Nolan was in those meetings saying, hey, we're going to do the armor this way and that way. Credit to the whole crew. In some sense, it is remarkable, even when you don't see the film, just that they could do this adventure, this project.
Mm-hmm. And he's insisting on it. So I don't want to take anything away from him that he has these department heads, but I think, like, and I know you're just kidding, but like talking about us doing anything on this level, we just can't. We don't have the budget. We don't have the manpower. But he, I believe, appears to be the type of leader that he's willing to do it as well. Like, for example, like he probably has done tons of research on his end, just in the story and those kind of things. But like, he walked to all those locations. He realized how difficult it was going to be. And like in that making of, which I feel like we're almost reviewing more than the film, Tom Holland was saying, like, normally base camp is about 10 feet from the set. And in this case, it was a 45-minute walk uphill in your costume, he said, like in sandals. So just the logistics. And I know from either that making of or something else I watched that Nolan went scouting a month before, and he walked up some of those hills in Scotland and stuff. And and I loved Matt Damon said, I would get to a location and go and just start laughing because it's like, who decided this is the greatest place to make a movie?
This is where you have to make a film.
But you do probably have to get pretty primitive in order to not have famously like a satellite dish in the background.
Yeah, young guns.
To portray the Odyssey in this modern era with modern cities, with cars and different things, you probably have to go deep into the interior of a country to find an untouched space that could be how many years ago? I mean, we're talking
a couple thousands, right? I'm immediately thinking of trying to shoot a scene in a garden. I can almost see from where I'm sitting and all the planes flying over.
Right.
Yeah, it was interesting you mentioned Tom Holland because both Tom Holland and Robert Pattinson I was not aware were in the film. But I feel like Holland was especially good cast because as an individual, he reads very young. He's a smaller build person and he has a very young looking face. So that I thought was a really good cast because even though he is an adult and he was playing an adult son, it gave us visually the distinction, and I thought he looked like he could be Anne Hathaway's son. I thought visually they matched very, very well.
I actually thought you were going to say, I was going to try to think of a very nice way to say Matt, and maybe it's because you always think of Matt next to Ben Affleck, and Ben Affleck is like 6'2" or something.
Right.
And so Matt is traditionally shorter than Ben Affleck. So I thought it read realistically that he was Matt Damon's son. Because
physically, right. I mean, facial features, I thought he looked a little bit more like Anne than Matt. And then the Pattinson kid, I'll give him this. I don't really know his work that well, but I wasn't bumped by it or anything. I thought he did a fine job. I just there's no star power for me because I didn't recognize him that well. I thought some of the other casts were good. Matt Damon's assistant second in command, whose name I forget, I think it starts with an EU, was played by an actor, Hemish, I think, Patel, who also played Watson in the Enola Holmes movies on Netflix. That's what I recognized him from. I would say the acting was excellent. I was never taken out of the film. I thought they were all very believable performances. Although I did say at one point I expected Anne to break out into I Dreamed a Dream because it seemed a very similarly emotional scene as from Les Mis. I want to give credit to the cinematographer. We talked a little bit before about IMAX, but just the physical nature of dragging that equipment everywhere, and it's not a standard IMAX setup anyway, getting all that done. I also read that they built from scratch some hexagonal panels for lighting to give the flickering torchlight. And I thought, this is amazing. We had used some lights from GVM that had a flickering campfire setting, and I think it worked fine for our purposes. But the cost of saying we're going to custom design a PCB with LEDs and then have them produced, a couple hundreds of them, for lighting, that is Hollywood at its best, right? That's where you have a $250 million budget. I want to know, how long did that take for the engineers to design that and the manufacture it? Yeah, and then does that just go in a warehouse? That's amazing. I would think just get some GVM lights and
they work.
Yeah, would it be cheaper to have a guy who's waving an orange gel in front of it? I don't know. But the level that the camera department went to get these images is amazing.
I mean, as we've touched on different departments, everybody showed up and everybody did their job.
Absolutely.
And it shows because the movie is just that epic. Like, this is one of those movies that they will continue to show a clip from when they talk about epic filmmaking or epic Hollywood even.
Well, Oppenheimer was also a longer film, but it didn't feel epic like this does.
Nuh-uh.
This definitely evokes, like you said, the Cecil B. DeMille sword and sandal kind of era giant productions. And I think in one of the interviews, Nolan even talked about
he really misses those type of.
Yeah. And I love that they did it because it's, like I said, an accomplishment to do it at all, regardless of kind of whether the film's good or not. Just the fact that they made it is itself an accomplishment worthy of some sort of award. And I wonder like how many of the crew did they get like a tattoo that I survived the Odyssey or whatever, because this seems like this would be a thing where Matt could be in a Starbucks and he'd run into the second AD and they were like, oh my gosh, do you remember when we were in Italy? And it seems like a thing that you will talk about for the rest of your career if you worked on this film. And I would love to know if it lands that way with audiences. Is this going to be something like a Citizen Kane that is just in the pantheon of films? I don't know. Time will tell, right? But it is an interesting thing. And then you ask yourself, what about like Matt Damon? Will this become his signature film? I mean, right now, for me, Good Will Hunting is what I always associate with them. They got the Oscar for it.
I think he's Jason Bourne for a lot of people.
That's true. Maybe a different generation, he's Jason Bourne. And you maybe wouldn't have, at the beginning of their careers, thought that Matt would eclipse Ben. But he's, with the Bourne films and then with this, Matt's doing very well in the tail end of his career as an actor. Really, I'm curious how this lands for people in their careers.
I'm so curious to see, especially where it came out in the summer, which I think it is a big summer movie. That makes sense. But how will it do next year with all of the award shows? Will people have forgotten it by then? Or will it get... Because this is clearly an Oscar movie.
Oh, gosh,
I don't think he set out to make it, but it is.
I don't know that Nolan said, I'm going to write an Oscar film, but yeah, absolutely, this is...
I mean, the costume design, like you were saying, the sound department, like all of those technical awards as well.
Right, and it's amazing that...
Hair and makeup won't get any, though.
It was interesting. I read about.
I can't believe that they were. Did he say no hair pieces only in the water scenes? Because there's a scene where Anne Hathaway has like a crown of a braid, not only going around her head, but then there's a long braid trailing down the back, and I cannot believe that's all her hair.
That seems like it would need to be extensions, but who knows? To give you an example, and credit to Ms. Hathaway, she found someone and took weeks of training in weaving in order to realistically weave in those scenes, which is a level of dedication I must tip my cap to.
There was only like a 2-second scene where she was actually weaving.
That level of dedication, I think, is what a Nolan film requires. So perhaps she started a year before Matt and was growing her hair out. I don't know.
Maybe she was just bored while he was growing his hair out, and she thought, well,
I'll do it too.
I'll do this, so I have something to say I sacrifice for too in the panel interview.
I didn't, hear her talk about it in the panel interview, but I would be curious to know how that worked. That's a good question.
She was making a baby, we know that.
The actor who played his second in command had a nice full bushy beard, but he also did in the Enola Holmes movies, so that maybe is a thing that he traditionally carries from film to film. But yeah, Matt, really, that's the dedication. And in this thing we saw, they said they figured out that at that time they did have barbering, so that the guys could have shorter hair. They didn't have to have the bushy caveman hair. I thought barbers could also do beards too, but that's not important right now. I really wonder how much of that a person who knows what they're doing would have the feedback, because as we've talked about, the ship, for example, is fantastic, but apparently it's not necessarily what a Greek would use at that time. But it
looked like a Viking ship.
It did have, it's a modern day ship that was done in the style of a Viking ship. And I just don't know where you're going to find any other but that one ship that you can roll around. So I think you go with what you got. But it was, I think, a fantastically shot film. The images were gorgeous. The sound, like you said, technically it was great. It was just an epic. And it's fun to see that. And then we flipped that around and we watched a movie on streaming that came out last year that was 90 minutes. And that's a quiet, contemplative film, which, by the way, is in my Letterboxd list for Dodge Media Productions. I have a quiet, contemplative films list, so you can check that out. But it was shot in Amsterdam in the winter with gorgeous gray skies, about two people dealing with grief.
I think you should give the title if people want
It's
to
called
see.
Midwinter Break.
It's on Peacock.
Leslie Manville and Kieran Hines, and it is exactly the kind of film that I respond to. It's a
beautiful.
quiet character study of two people. It's set contemporary in a simple location.
Over the course of like a weekend.
Yeah, just a few days. That's the kind of film that I could make. If you gave me $10 million, I could make a film like Midwinter Break.
Well-
I don't know if you gave me $250 million if I could ever make a film like The Odyssey. I don't know that I have the vision that Nolan does to think about, hey, let's find this cave in Greece and schlep everybody up the hill to film inside of it. I would go to a warehouse and it would look like it. So tip of the cap again to everybody involved in this project. Because of the length, I do wonder if more folks are going to catch us on streaming than the theater, if that is going to affect viewage. But I think it would work great in streaming at home as well.
Have you seen any box office numbers? Not to be that horrible person that
I have not,
brings
oddly.
everything down to money, but as we say, it is called show business.
Yeah, I normally do, but I haven't in this case seen how it's doing in the box office.
Opened at 264.1 million worldwide.
Okay, so they got the budget back.
That includes 124.5 million domestically and 139.6 million overseas.
Our rough straw poll, the theater we were in was pretty well
It was
filled.
pretty full.
Yep. Any final thoughts on The Odyssey by Christopher
Let
Nolan?
me see. I take objection. 4 dogs were harmed, or were portrayed to be harmed. I will say that. I'm sure they did not really harm dogs. But as a dog lover, I did not like seeing the 4 dogs. Now, most of them were off screen.
Yes, there was one on-screen puppy harming that was surprising and not cool. And yes, there are some dog perils that must go past.
I didn't appreciate that, Mr.
I didn't at all.
I
either.
don't think that made a difference to the narrative.
Yes, one dog was key to the narrative, but I don't think we had to see his
The demise.
Yeah.
So that was my
I
only
agree.
objection.
Yeah, so everyone watch out, check, does the dog die, if that's kind of your thing, but we'll give you this shorthand.
Heads up.
There is some dog peril there. It's not the worst. I think maybe you could have rewritten that as cats and would have been just fine.
Yeah, aren't cats more... Oh, no, maybe not. Anyway, other than that, thumbs up to all department heads, to
Right.
Mr. Nolan, to his producer, Emma. Good job, everybody.
Yeah, it appears that Chris and Emma never stop, and don't forget, Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies. Some of our longtime listeners may have already gotten a sticker or two from our podcast, but if you would like the complete sticker pack so you can compare with your friends or maybe make your neighbors jealous, please send an email to Christy@DodgeMediaProductions.com requesting a sticker pack. Geography does not matter. We will ship internationally.
Yes, and we understand that we have some fans in Korea. Thank you. In Germany, thank you. Australia, we have a couple fans. So we would love to know where you're listening from. We have a new sticker that we are very excited about, designed by our very own Michael W. Dodge, and we would love to send it out to you. So just shoot me an email with your address. And this is not for email collection, although if you would like to be on our newsletter, state that and I can get you on our newsletter list. But we are not mining for emails. We simply want to show our appreciation for your listenership and happy to send you out a sticker pack. Just ask.
Bonus points for people who post photos on social media of them rocking their DNP stickers.
Yes, that would be amazing.
Thanks for listening to Dodge Movie Podcast with Christy and Mike Dodge of Dodge Media Productions. To find out more about this podcast and what we do, go to DodgeMediaProductions.com. Subscribe, share, leave a comment, and tell us what we should watch next. Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.